Hi, Angels. Welcome to a Sustainable Sip. Tonight, we're going to spend the next hour talking to some of our favorite winemakers about sustainability in wine and also organic, biodynamic. How do we decipher the terminology? I know a little bit about wine. I know very little about sustainability in wine. So I am super excited to hear what our winemakers tonight have to say about this topic. And so are you, obviously, since you tuned in to hear us talk about sustainability in wine for the next hour. So I hope you have a beautiful glass of wine in front of you, preferably the Blindside Organic Sauvignon Blanc Semillon 2001, which Ben and Naomi Gould made. So talk a little bit about how you got started in making organic wine, and also maybe about the particular wine that the Angels might be drinking right now.
Sure. Thank you. Thanks, Johan. Hello, Angels. Thanks for tuning in. So our story, perhaps to start with, I should give a small little definition and framework around sustainability. It's a word that's used in a lot of different ways, and it does involve the organics and biodynamics as well. But generally, in a business sense, it's made up of your business, society, and the environment. So from the environment perspective, that's where organics and biodynamics can come in. Also, how you use resources, energy, biodiversity, are you recycling, what sort of farming you're doing. And then society is the community, including your workers. So, what are you doing? Are you, paying them the right rates? Are you supporting them? Are you active in your local community in things like charities or schools or etc.? And then there's the business side, which is you need to be sustainable. So you need to be able to continue to do things. And if you make a profit, then you can be around to do all those other things. And if you don't, then you can't be organic or biodynamic because you would have put the for sale sign out the front and got on to do something else. Probably here in Western Australia, go and work in the mines. So for us, it's been a long journey. We have been involved in wine for about 25 years in Margaret River. Started in conventional winery with all the latest technology. And then my wife and I ended up traveling in 05, 06?
Yeah, end of 05.
So we got an old builder's van in Europe and did every surf break and wine region in Western Europe, which is really cool. And it opened our eyes. And when we came back, we decided to do things a bit differently. So we had a little vineyard. We started phasing the chemicals out and then started converting to organics, which is the absence of synthetic inputs. From there, went to biodynamics, which is another level, I guess, of organics. It's working more with the soil, lunar rhythms, etc. And then we bought another vineyard. So at the moment, we have 20 hectares here, which I'm looking at now, of certified organic biodynamic vineyard. We have a 9-hectare vineyard we lease, and we buy about another 15. But everything is organic certified, and the winery on site as well is. So yes, just anything you want to add, Naomi?
No, I think that's pretty much covered it.
Okay. So the wine we've got tonight is the Blindside Semillon Sauvignon Blanc. This is from an organic vineyard in an area called Metric Soils. It's about 66% Semillon and old glass. So cheers, everyone. Happy Friday. It's only 5 o'clock here. If it was 8 o'clock, I'd be well on my way. Quite simply made. So with this wine, there was no acid additions. It's just all natural acid. Also wild fermented in stainless steel. Pretty simple, fresh, light, bright. Good for smashing down, not thinking about too much. Cheers.
Excellent. Well, I hope you're enjoying that. I haven't got that particular wine, so I wouldn't mind someone describing it to me. But obviously, really classic Margaret River blend, right? Semillon, Sauvignon Blanc, or Sauvignon Blanc, Semillon?
Yes. So Semillon dominant, so it's a lot grassier. The natural acids mean because we haven't corrected it, it's a softer wine and it has a more broader mid palate. Yes.
Oops, I'm freezing a little bit tonight. I do have to apologize for my internet, if you can apologize for your internet. But anyway, it is what it is. But you mentioned biodynamic versus organic. So maybe, Derek, you spend a lot of time with this, right? Do you mind explaining the difference a bit more to the angels?
Your mic is on mute, Derek.
There we go. I guess, I mean, if you're certified organic, then there is, it's a pretty, it's just another annexure in the actual standard, I suppose, if you talk about the standard that we all work to. But as far as the actual practicality of the biodynamics is, we basically spend a lot more time looking at soil health, I suppose, and we also use the I guess the lunar calendar to a certain extent, and everything's pretty much based on the teachings of Rudolf Steiner.
Okay, so is it, if you're certified organic, you then can become biodynamic, or vice versa? Or how as a consumer, what's the real difference?
Well, I think, I mean, if you're biodynamically certified, then you're automatically organically certified. We choose with all of our labels to just basically just talk about biodynamics, because that's really what we're focused on, I guess. You know, there was quite a few lectures written by Rudolf Steiner about many different things apart from agriculture, which is what we're focusing on. But if you're up for a good, interesting read, I highly recommend you get stuck into some of his other books.
Yeah, I mean, some of the highlights though, because I've heard this before, it's quite interesting, right? So you know, some of the biodynamic practices, according to Steiner, includes what, for example?
Oh, well, we work on a series of preparations. So we've got 500 and 501, which are basically for your vineyard soils or canopy. But then we've got the other composting preps, which basically, you know, 502, 34, and so forth. But they're all basic. I mean, if you look at it in a holistic sort of a way, they are bringing some sort of life force into your compost pile to sort of invigorate it, which you then spread onto your vines or your soil to spread that sort of invigoration.
Derek, is there a story behind the name of the 501 referring to at the number of billions of microorganisms or something like that?
Oh, look, not that I've heard of, but I mean, 501's the equisetum sort of spray, which basically is what we use. It's a silica-based product, which we spray either normally atmospherically into the vines at a certain lunar constellation. But it's, I mean, some people are quite concerned about using these sort of sprays with their ability to intensify light. You know, you want to be careful doing it on a hot day.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So there is quite a lot of science, like. Sorry, so there is quite a bit of science going into it.
Oh, look, if you sit down with a proper scientist or a scientist and actually want to have a logical conversation about biodynamics, you're probably going to get shouted out of the room. We've got a few friends that are non-believers who are very scientifically minded and very, you know, unable to think a little bit outside the square, and it's hard to get your point across sometimes.
It's all about observation a lot too, isn't it? Based on observation. Is that Rudolf Steiner? Observing what's happening in front of you while things are growing and all that sort of stuff. Yeah.
I think like you don't have that capacity to actually reach for a synthetic fungicide or something like that. So we spend a lot of time out in the vineyard looking for you know, small issues which can become larger issues if you don't get onto it quickly. So you know, I mean, that said, we do have the capacity to use sulfur sprays and also copper, but we're on a bit of a mission to try to cut copper out of our vineyard, mainly because what it does to soil, it's, you know, not fantastic for microbes.
Okay.
Hey Derek, a question came through from one of our angels, and they'd asked, if you're driven by the lunar cycle, how does that affect harvest?
I think, yeah, well, certainly. I mean, most most growers, whether they're conventional, organic, or biodynamic, do notice that there is a change in the ripening process during the the beginnings of a full moon, or in the lead up to a full moon. I think we certainly are trying to do as many things as we can possibly by the lunar calendar, but I'm not going to go out there and harvest in the rain. I think that you've got to be fairly practical about the way you approach these things, but try to use it as much as possible.
And at the end of the day, right, what does this mean for the wine and the wine that the angels buy? What's the end game of the process?
Well, I think generally I'd say that most people that are focusing on organics or BD are really trying to grow the best fruit that they can from their site. And I think by not pushing things too hard, using urea or other sort of non-organic fertilizers, those sort of things change plant structure and they change the way that things grow. We're happy with a lower yield and things being imbalanced and not being pushed along too hard. So my personal observation is we make wines that sort of are pretty reflective of the place they're grown in.
Okay, cool. All right, so a bit of a broader question. What does it mean to make wine sustainably? So Jock and James, did you want to jump in on this one and talk a bit about what it means to you to make wine sustainably?
James, you can lead off with this one, mate.
Yeah, for me, it's just having an open mind and being a little bit more holistic. So just thinking about everything from the vineyard, the winemaking, the business, and just seeing, in a glass of wine, you get the product, you get to drink it, but how much good can you do? How much can you get back into society? How much can you put back into the community? And for me, it just came about when I started on Pontarilo Wines, the Seed the Change. My friend started a program called Seed the Change, and I was the first one to sign up because he pitched it at me. And, from a simple gesture of selling wine with naked and everyone getting to enjoy the wine, we plant one tree globally, every case that's drunk. And, we've managed to plant 10,000 trees to date. This year, we're going to probably get close to 5,000 dozen. So there's another 5,000 trees. But it's not just the tree planting. This is where what kind of impact can you have on the community? The trees, when they were planted down in Africa, were planted by a school. It is profitable, and that little bit of money that we put towards it, it's an education. It's part of education that can be added down there in the community. So it's very, very broad sustainability. It's rather than deforestation, we're getting farmers to plant trees and make a living, actually, and commercially make a living from planting trees. So yeah, sustainability for me is just a very holistic, how much greater impact can you have just doing simple things.
Fantastic. No, I mean, it's really about being a mindfulness as well, right? In what we do and how we go about it. And I think wine making lends itself, and obviously work in the land lends itself quite naturally to this concept. So, Jock, I mean, does this extend beyond wine? Obviously, you dabble a bit in spirits, etc., and in your operation.
Yeah, thanks, Johan. Ben made an interesting comment talking about business, society, and environment, and I think you can tell by this bad light, it's making my hair look grey, but I'm actually showing a little bit of age. When you actually live in the environment that you farm in, it actually makes you think about it. And many years ago, viticulture was dominated by chemicals like simazine, by spray seed, insecticides like chlorpyrifos, and we just haven't seen those chemicals for over 20 years. And the origins of biodynamics and Steiner was the fact that in the 1890s they didn't have these synthetic chemicals, so they used whatever was in their environment. They used lots more observations. They tried to find whatever they could to build soil health, and it actually came from taking a closer understanding of the environment. And I think in many ways, the slow food movement and the slow farming movement has basically mean divorcing people from chemical companies and actually spending time in the environment. And we all know that, you know, if it rains and we've got chemicals on the roof and then we drink the rainwater, that's probably not a good equation to consider unless you're farming in a very clean way. So I like to encourage people that my vegetable garden's next to my vineyard and I drink the rainwater that falls on the roof. So I'm certainly not going to be toxifying the environment that I live in. And I think that's where consumers should have a fair bit of comfort that the people that actually grow their product, live in their environment, drink their own wine and their own food, can almost be can be trusted because it's not done from a distance and it's not a commodity product. And I think that's where the group around the table have actually want to, when they talk about sustainable, they actually want their children to be able to farm from the land as well. And I noticed one of the people earlier asked a question: should we honor the original custodians of the land? And we've been doing that a little bit, and it's really interesting when you sit down and listen to older people talking about their environment and how it's passed from generation to generation. And I think this generation that's online at the moment is at a tipping point in the environment about, the fact that if we do want to pass it on, more than one generation, many generations, we are at a tipping point. And I think that's where wine carries a really important message for people to consider.
And I think on that topic as well, obviously, small to medium-sized family-owned wineries stretch, far beyond what you would expect from a big corporate. They might be able to tick all the boxes, but if you're going to pass your land on to the next generation, literally, it lends itself to looking after it a lot more closely, I would have thought. So, yeah. Right, so we have a question here. Aussie innovation. So screw caps as opposed to cork. Is there a difference here in environmental friendliness? Anyone got an opinion?
Oh, well, from my point of view, I mean, everything we do is under screw caps, simply because of, basically zero chance of cork taint, and that, a lot of our consumers, or, particularly our Naked Angels, is a preference for them. The environmental cost of it, really depends on what end of the telescope you want to look at. The cork industry would say they've got a particular opinion. Aluminium, how it's recycled. Very open question, but certainly screw caps are what we're going to be using until there's an alternative.
And they're recyclable too. So.
You think
I guess it's sustainable as well. If you do consider cork taint, then you have to pour a bottle out, right? So that's a bit of a waste there as well. So I do think that screw caps win in this equation. I don't know how energy consuming, I can imagine they're reasonably energy consuming to produce.
Well, Johan, I'll take the slightly arrogant South Australian approach that we've had a container deposit scheme since 1977, and the eastern states are still trying to get their head around actually taking a bottle back and getting a deposit on it. So I think until you guys get on board with a container deposit scheme, you don't really have a leg to stand on when it comes to corks and screw caps.
New South Wales got cash for cans. We've got cash for cans and bottles.
Yeah, this is a very interesting, conversation. I think that we actually have a poll that we wanted to post up for the Angels. If Tamara, can you post it up, and we'll see what everyone says. on the question of corks versus screw caps.
Just on the container deposit scheme, South Australia is actually looking to do take the lead in Australia-wide in terms of deposit on wine bottles, also 2 litre milk cartons as well.
I think WA is doing that next year for wine bottles as well. We've got cans, beer bottles, and some soft drinks now, but yeah, wine starts next year.
Yep.
All right, are we going to kick on, or we're going to wait for the result then?
Yeah, we'll give it a couple of moments so we can continue to go, and I'll pop in to let everybody know who the winner is. Corks, screws.
Someone just said if they get 10 cents for every wine bottle, they'll be rich. 50 cents would be good.
That would be good. There's Jock, I really loved what you were saying about, really nurturing and growing your grapes on your property, but it would also be good to hear from, people who, or one of our winemakers that actually go out and outsource their grapes, and how you go and, choose your farmers to make sure that they align with your values.
I'll ask a leading question so Gus can kick off from it, because the Australian sustainability system started in McLaren Vale in 2000. New Zealand's actually had a really good head start in terms of sustainability. So you might be able to talk about your system over there.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Jock. Yeah, I suppose the New Zealand wine growers implemented a sustainability accreditation across the whole New Zealand industry. I think it was probably 10 years ago now, and or maybe even a bit longer. So it's been up and going for quite a while, and what that means is basically they made an incentivized system where if you wanted to enter your wine in a wine show in New Zealand, you had to be accredited as sustainable by the system. And so basically what that entails is a lot of auditing, and every vineyard and every winery gets audited against a set of benchmarks that are deemed sustainable practices, and each year they get reviewed, and the bar just notches up every year. It actually creates quite a bit of work, but it's pulled that bottom 10% that would have never changed. It's pulled them up, and I think it's been a really good thing for the industry as a whole over here. And it means we can go to the market with something that unifies New Zealand wine as a something that you can hang your hat on. And there's not too many countries that would have something like that. So, but what it means for us is, not a huge amount of change to what we were already doing, because we were sort of heading down the organic route about 5 years ago anyway. Probably started 6 years ago, but I came into it from a winemaking background. I'd been making wine for 15 years for big corporate companies, and in about 2014, Mark and I decided we wanted to start making organic wine, and we actually ended up buying grapes to start with, and off an organic vineyard here in Marlborough. And so, yeah, we sort of started from a winemaking and trying to work out the best way to make wine organically when you come from a conventional background was quite interesting. For example, when you're fermenting white wine, particularly Sauvignon Blanc, you're having to ferment it really cold to keep the aromas. And sometimes that can lead to stress in the yeast, and they produce this off aroma called hydrogen sulfide. And if you're a conventional winemaker, you can add a nitrogen product called DAP, and that removes this hydrogen sulfide because it makes the yeast happy. But with organic winemaking, you can't do that. So you've really got to pay attention to the health of the yeast and the temperature you're fermenting at, and trying to work with the grower. And now that we've got some organic vineyard as well, we're really focusing on getting the nitrogen levels in the grapes before we ferment. So look, we're looking at, like Derek said before, putting nitrogen through using bacteria in the soil that grows on the roots of clover, and building that up in the soil, and then that is then available for the vine to take up, and it'll go into the grapes later on. So yeah, I think that's a bit of a journey over here with, you know, we've come from sustainable and now we're focusing on organics as the next step, and we're yet to delve into biodynamics, but we're sort of coming at organics from a microbiological point of view, and the more I'm reading about that, the more I'm getting interested in biodynamics. So it's something we're going to probably investigate in the future. Yeah, but as far as the differences between here and Australia is, we're quite a bit more wet and cooler. So we get a lot of humidity in summer, and that means we're having to really work hard to fight off fungus diseases like powdery mildew, which is like a grey mold that grows on the leaves and berries. And we're basically having to work a lot harder over here compared to Australia because it's a lot hotter and drier, especially in McLaren Vale where Mark is. You know, he will spray sort of 6 times a year, whereas we will spray 12 to 14 times a year to keep the powdery mildew at bay. So it's a lot more work over here, but it's worth it, we think. So yeah.
I'm curious, guys, when you say spraying, what exactly are you spraying? Because when I think of, you know, and I'm newbie, I guess we'll say, in all sustainable winemaking and organic winemaking. So I would think you wouldn't spray anything. How do you make sure that aligns with the organic and sustainability?
Yeah, of course. So as someone said before, with organics, you're not allowed to use anything that's synthetic. And so basically the toolkit we've got is for things like powdery mildew is sulfur, which is just an elemental sulfur. That's there's deposits of that in the ground that people can dig up, or it's a byproduct of petroleum refining. So again, it comes out of the ground. And then there's copper, which is a metal that comes out of the ground. We don't tend to use too much copper in Marlborough because copper is more for a downy mildew, which is a different type of mildew, and our weather conditions don't really produce much downy mildew. So we actually use very little copper in Marlborough. It's more sulfur, and we're also starting to use another fungicide that helps, which is an extract of a bacterial fermentation, and that attacks the hyphae of the fungus, which is the little strands that go out on the leaf. So yeah, basically it's just a water solution with a small amount of sulfur and this bacterial fermentation product that helps keep the fungus at bay. Whereas in South Australia, where it's really hot and dry, the weather actually does the job for you, because it's, you know, it'll be above 30 degrees a lot of the time and very little humidity. And so the fungus just dries out and cooks. So.
Well, Gus, you've been to Mark's vineyard up there at Stone Hill. I mean, it's that windy it'll blow a dog off a chain up there.
It's true. Yeah. Yeah.
As
No.
one old farmer said, it'll blow the milk out of your tea. They have 100-kilometre gully winds up there, and Mark's only a skinny bloke. He has to put stones in his shoes to go walking up there.
It's true. No,
Mate, it's so windy here at Cape Jaffa. We shout at the wind.
It's true.
Very
Good place for a wind farm down there.
So, but that's a summary of organic. So the absence of synthetic fertilizers and pesticides. Is there something else in organic that you got to sort of fulfill just on a basic level for the angels?
Yeah, so lower sulfur is probably one.
In the winemaking, yeah, definitely.
Yeah. There's levels for sulfur dioxide, maximum levels.
Right.
And it's about half as much as what you're conventionally allowed to add. So that means you have to be a lot more careful with the winemaking process.
Yeah, we can't
and
use
additives too. Yep.
Yeah, a lot of other additives like diammonium phosphate and other things for fermentation. So we've got to be a bit more careful during that sort of winemaking process.
Yeah, again, they've got to be certified and allowable products to be added to the wine.
Well, Ash, we haven't heard that much from you yet. I mean, you're Naked's first fully certified organic winemaker. So what made you move into that space?
I was working in just conventional wineries with conventional fruit. And then I got a job at Tamburlaine Wines in the Hunter Valley, which is now one of New South Wales' biggest organic producers. They had a vineyard out at Orange there where they grew organic grapes. And I was a winemaker at Tamburlaine. I saw the grapes coming in. And before I started there, everyone was telling me, it's no good there. Bloody the grapes are shit and you can't make good wine. Rah, rah. And I saw the grapes coming in and they looked just as good as any grapes I'd ever seen. It tasted just as good. And probably had better acidity, that sort of stuff, and we're picking lower BOMAs too, so they had more flavour. So just from that, I just saw that, and then it interested me in the winemaking side of it, what I can't use, what I can use. I'm probably going back more to basics where you can't add a lot of stuff, so more is less, and sort of not freaking out so much about pH and all that sort of stuff, but trusting your winemaking and trusting the quality of fruit. So from there I just sort of went from there. I met a lot of growers that grew organic grapes, and I like what they were doing. My father actually went organic as well out where we were, and after about 4 or 5 years he thought the place never looked or felt better or more alive, actually, the vineyard. So I mean, I've always done things pretty simply. I don't really overthink things, and I think that's what you talk about biodynamics, which is observation, all that sort of stuff, and acting on it, and just doing the right thing without throwing a lot of chemicals at it or, stuff like that. Yeah, so I stick to that route. Yeah, I like it.
And obviously the Angel's been supporting you over the years as well and backing you, buying the wines, etc. So, yep. I think we do have quite a big following for organic in the Angel base.
Yeah. Ash, curious your wines are priced really well. And I assume that, having organic wines is fairly expensive. How are you able to, place it as a reasonable price for Angels? Yeah,
I mean, I've seen great prices rise everywhere, actually. I mean, we've had a few hard years with drought and smoke taint and all that sort of stuff. I don't think they're more expensive. I think they're about the same, really. I think that's a bit of a myth. It's like, should organic wine be more expensive than non-conventional wine? Not really. I don't know. So I went blank.
Well, I think that goes to show just kind of, how Naked Wines really takes care of their Angels. You're saying that the cost of organic grapes are not more expensive. And so with the funding that you have Naked and the support on our end, we're able to give Angel members back the wine at a really great price.
Yeah, that's right. I've been able to give growers what they want to be sustainable too. So it's not actually about how much they're getting. It's like, how much do they need to keep growing year after year and keep putting in what they're putting in. to produce good grapes. Because I think Derek touched on it, it's not all about the tonnage. With organic winemaking, you're going to lose tonnage. That's why not a lot of growers sort of go that way. But if you stick with it, you sort of find a happy medium, and then your wines are better and you're happier, you know.
Yeah. And is there a lot of extra work in the winemaking process to make your wines organic?
No. Funny enough, it's organic winemaking, conventional winemaking is pretty well the same. You can add sulfur. You can use certain products that you can use in conventional winemaking as well. You can't use all of them. As I touched on, they've got to be certified for organic winemaking or allowable in the process. Yeah.
I think Ashley would agree that good quality organic wine actually has its birthplace in the vineyard, and
yeah, that's right.
I can see Derek nodding away there. You know, grape growers.
Yeah.
Look, we often say that organic grapes are 40% more expensive than conventional grapes. 30% comes from weed control, and 10% comes from certification. So I'm glad Ash is able to deliver beautiful quality wines at a price. I know that Gus and Derek would, on some occasions, you know, look at the cost of their inputs and you know, scratch their heads sometimes because it can be challenging. But you know, when you get it right, it's certainly the quality of the wines is fantastic.
Yeah, it's definitely challenging. From a yield point of view, it's probably the most challenging because you can't put those high nitrogen fertilizers on. Sauvignon Blanc conventional growers in Marlborough can crop up to 20 tonnes a hectare, which is heaps. And whereas with an organic production over here with Sauvignon Blanc, you're going to be sitting more at around 10. So it's about half the amount of yield, and that cuts your gross margin out a lot when you're running a vineyard. So it really probably depends where you're growing, the site.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, we grow a lot of it. My grapes come out from central west or central ranges, New South Wales down. It's a bit warmer and drier heat, less rain. Orange is a bit more of a challenge, and the grapes have sort of risen in price up there for that matter. But yeah, you're right there. It's where you grow it and how many inputs or what inputs you're putting into it. Yeah.
We had a really, really good question here, a bit of a controversial question here, so I'll see who wants to answer it. So is there a big difference between organic and what people call natural wines? Who wants to take that one on?
I can take that one if you want.
Yeah, Ben.
Ben.
Yeah, in Australia, there's no sort of rules or laws around using the word natural. So if you buy a natural wine here, it could be conventional fruit, just with a naked lady on the label. But in Europe, in France particularly, they've now got they just passed through a natural law, which is the grapes themselves have to be at least organic, which means they can be organic and or biodynamic. And there's two levels. You can have nothing added apart from 30 parts of sulfur or less, or 0 sulfur. So there's like two levels to natural. And that has become law in France now, because it did start as a counterculture, and having certification around natural sort of went against the fact that people were sort of rallying against, you know, corporates and things like that as well. So the short answer in Australia is no, not yet. There's no difference. But going back to what Jock said, you know, it's just about knowing your grower. So if you find out, you know, where people, you know, who's growing the wine, who's making the wine, and where the grapes are from, you'll get the answer. There's a lot of great natural producers there that stick to the sort of the French rules, but there's as many that aren't as well. So it's a bit of a mess at the moment.
I personally think it'd be fantastic if it does come into Australia. I've been sort of watching that space for a while, and it's actually really encouraging to see a lot of the guys. I've got a lot of mates that are making natural wine, and they're actually really trying their hardest now to source organic grapes. And we've got a few little funny blocks of bits and pieces that we don't normally like to deal with, but they're more than happy to pay top dollar for the fruit. So I'm happy about it.
Well done, mate.
yeah, that's really encouraging to hear that there's now a certification coming into it, because I think it's been the biggest frustration from when I looked into it, having a you're put against as an organic producer, you're put against natural producers, and yet they'll be just buying some natural producers are just buying conventional grapes and calling it natural. And yes, you can argue every wine's natural, but some are more than others. And I'd definitely like to believe that organic wines are more natural than conventional. So
I'll jump in because I see Ash is twitching at his eye at the moment. My biggest concern, and I've got mates that are making natural wines, my biggest concern is for the consumer, that they'll get a wine that is called natural, that is actually terrible to drink, and they'll move across to an entirely different beverage and not come back to wine at all. So I'm very supportive of people having minimal inputs in their wines, and wines that express region and terroir and personal style. But it scares me sometimes when people pay a lot of money for something that is, let's say, oxidized, has some bacterial faults, and is sold to them at a high price. So yeah, I do worry about some of the elements of natural wine, and it would be very nice to see it tighten up a little bit so that the friends that are the consumers that support us don't get ripped off with a bad drink.
I think the bottom line is, no matter what you do, drinkability is the key. You got to have drinkability.
Yeah, great.
Yeah, I thought that question would kick along for a while. James, you got any thoughts on natural wine?
Yeah, I tried it. I went down that path, and I just nailed it. Like, yeah, I've tried too many which are natural. You get put in front of you. People want to know your opinion as a winemaker, and they are just, being a winemaker and going to university and studying winemaking, you just see faults and you can't see past the faults. And I wear it on my sleeve. Yeah, so not to say that there isn't great natural wine out there, but yeah, just get back to quality, value for money, and yeah, drink what you want to drink and drink what you like to drink more of. So.
It's a shelf life as well, I find, with natural wine.
Yeah.
Sorry. It can taste good, a couple of months after you've made it, and then after a year in the bottle, it can be completely oxidized. So.
So Gus, what is that? Is that just the absence of sulfur, or?
Yeah, basically the lower amount of sulfur dioxide is what prevents the wine oxidizing, and depending on how careful you've been in the winemaking process, in terms of limiting oxygen exposure when you've bottled it, you get a certain amount of dissolved oxygen going with the wine into the bottle, and if there's not enough sulfur in there, then eventually the natural process is it turns to vinegar. So
I think some winemakers think the set and forget process, just put the lid on it, let it do its thing, she'll be right. But you really got to keep an eye on it as well as sort of let it do its own thing. There's a balance, like with anything.
Yep.
All right, cool.
Oh, here's a really good question that came through earlier. And someone was saying there's a general opinion that organic wine doesn't stir up allergies or result in hangovers. Anybody want to take this? What is the evidence there is to support that, or just kind of throw this thought away?
I'm allergic to ethyl acetate, personally.
Look, I'll have a little crack, and I'm not self-promoting, but I'll let you know. So that's the preservative-free, which was bottled just the other day. And look, some people have allergies to sulfurs, others have allergies to histamines. Some people have allergies to other things and blame it on the wine that they consumed in abundance the night before. So I think it is true though that histamines can upset some. We've all been at tastings where someone says, oh, red wine gives me a terrible headache or even a migraine, and okay, that's understandable. But personally, I'm actually, I think I'm sensitive to high rates of sulfur. You know, a freshly bottled Riesling, 2 or 3 bottles of that and you'll wake up with a dry mouth. So I certainly think we're getting a fair bit, well, everyone's moving away from the corporate recipe into a softer approach to wine and food and the environment. So I think we're well placed at the moment. And we actually listen to consumers. You know, Derek's talking about his low sulfur rates, Gus over in New Zealand, you know, lower rates as well. I think we're actually well placed. We're probably at the pointy end in terms of producers, in terms of reducing allergy effects with people.
Yeah, I'm a big one on the sulfur.
Yeah, I think what you guys were saying before about, you know, you might try to be hands off and all of these sort of things, but you still got to have some, you know, you still got to put your hand in there when you see something's going wrong. And even with like making preservative-free wines, there's still quite a lot of work you can do there to make sure things are looking as good as possible.
Yeah. I think the main thing for what I've learned is the sulfur compared to a packet of dried apricots that we use in wine is about 1/10 to a fifth. A tenth, like it's 20% of what you would see in an apricot packet. And what we're trying to do is to go even further so that it's, you know, 1% of what you'd find in a dried fruit packet. So if you are sensitive to sulfur, you'd definitely know after you'd cleaned up a packet of dried apricots. And yeah, I think there's also, coming back to the natural wine thing, is there's a new bit of research out called biogenic amines, and that's compounds that can be produced by bacteria that are actually quite harmful to humans. And so the less sulfur you have, the more bacteria you'd have in your wine, because sulfur prevents the bacteria from growing. And so basically when you're playing in this area, you need to be, like Derek said, a lot more switched on. And when something's not going according to plan, you need to step in and make some changes. So you need to pay attention to the science a lot more, I think.
And obviously for sulfur dioxide as in aging wine has quite a significant effect there as well, right? So with preservative-free wine, I assume you can't age that forever. It will get to a point where it should be consumed earlier in its life, I assume, Jock.
Well, certainly. I mean, so at the moment we're drinking the 21 organic Shiraz, and I reckon by the time they'll hit the markets with Naked, most of them will be gone by the middle of the year, and they're still fresh as a daisy. So, you know, we used to make wines to cellar. Most of you guys are too young to remember that. Derek, you might remember that. You know, used to make wines that would cellar. And then these days, you know, you look at, you guys have data, consumption from purchase is, you know, normally between 24 hours and about 3 months. So, and I think that lends itself really well to, you know, sustainable and fresh and biodynamic wines, because with the lower sulfur levels, you actually taste the vineyard. And I know that might sound like a sales pitch, but you actually do taste the vineyard de Terroir and, well, in New Zealand, gravel. But, you know, it actually is a beautiful fresh drink.
Yeah, there's more flavour because the sulfur actually binds up all that flavour and all the, you know, all the interesting stuff too, if it's not volatile. And yeah, heaps more flavour in non-organic wines. Not preservative-free wines, sorry.
Ash, you'd know this one. You probably wouldn't know this one precisely, but in 1978, you couldn't sell your grapes in McLaren Vale, and the old man made us freeze.
I was born in 81.
Yeah, right. He made us freeze as much juice as we could, and we had to drink frozen grape juice for the next 4 or 5 months and empty the freezer. And that frozen grape juice flavour is what we're now seeing in wines, which is a much more low sulfur, fruit forward, just that delicious slurpy character that people
Yep.
are looking for. And
Yeah.
people aren't buying that antiquated oak flavour that that did 20 years ago.
And less acidity because there's no added acids and all that sort of stuff. So you got less acidity, more plusher wines, better drinkability, softer, less heartburn, that sort of stuff.
We had a question, a poll there on orange wines. Ben and Naomi, I know you make orange wine, right? What is orange wine? Has that got anything to do with organic or biodynamic?
You want to go? Do you want me to?
Yeah, I can go.
After you.
Orange wine is just white wine with skin contact. So you make a white wine like you would normally a red wine. It doesn't need to be organic, biodynamic, or anything to fall into that category. But like we've spoken about, it always comes off much better quality if you start with the best grapes from organic or biodynamic fruit. And then you just get a little bit more tannin, depending how much skin contact or how extreme you go with leaving the wine on skins is the depth of flavour I guess you get from the wine. 6 months will give you a very tannic white wine or orange wine, whereas a month will give you something that's a really nice blend of fruit as well as a slight bit of tannin, so it's still drinkable, nice and easy. The extreme of a 6 month, you would drink it with food and it would be amazing, but on its own you would be probably quite startled by just having an easy white wine glass. You'd be a bit, oh, what's that? But put it with some food and it's delicious, just like a red wine would be.
All right, excellent question. I guess we've got 5 minutes left. Is there any other questions from the audience? We'd love to hear something else. If there's anything you're wondering about in terms of terminology, or I think everyone sort of gets that it's better, ideally, to make wines without synthetic pesticides and fertilizers and in a more natural way, whilst containing the elements that bacteria that can get into wine, oxidization, etc., which makes for unpleasant wine, depending on your preference. However, I think for most angels, they would prefer to drink non-oxidized, bacteria-free wine made from organic or biodynamically grown grapes.
Yeah. Well, as people are popping in their questions to close out, I would love to, we're kind of doing this a little backwards, but get a quick introduction of, everyone that's jumped on the call, our winemakers that have taken us through this wonderful hour. Just introduce yourself, throw in your wine label to make sure that everyone can, pop in a bottle in their next virtual cart and try your wines out. Ash, since you are up on my screen, I'll let you go first.
Yep, I'm Ash Horner from Horner Wines, based in the Hunter Valley. I've been with Naked Wines since 2013 and still going strong. Love it. That's why I'm here. Cool. I haven't got a bottle of wine. I'm actually drinking my Vidello at the moment. 2021. It's a bit of a smash hit on Naked Wines. Vidello is a bit underrated, but this one's quite good, I think. And I've got a new wine coming out next week as well. So can't tell you what it is, or should I?
Yeah.
Anyway, it's a new variety and a different variety, but it's I'll let you all know. It's called Pick Pole. There you go.
Oh, nice.
So yeah.
A nice one.
Yeah.
Oh, boss lady Chloe said you could tell us what the wine is.
What's that? Oh yeah, it's Pick Pole. So it's organic Pick Pole from the Central Ranges out at just below Orange there. So there's only 2 vineyards in Australia, actually. I think there's one in McLaren Vale at Coriel, and then there's one up with these guys. And we do a little bit. We actually ferment this one in Hungarian oak, and lots of lees work and that sort of stuff. So lots of texture and body, which it's not known for. It's really known for really an acidic wine and an oyster wine. So we sort of reined it in and made it a bit more texture, a bit more flavour. Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah. Let's hope it goes well.
Lovely. All right, Ben, introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Ben. This is my wife, Naomi. We're from Margaret River in Western Australia, which is still not open to anyone else in the country. Our wine is Blindside, which is from one single vineyard here in Margaret River. We have been with Naked since 2016 or 15. Going pretty well. Naked's allowed us to do a lot of things, including buying this vineyard and converting it to organic, and doing a lot of other things here that we get excited about, including stealing all the fish and chip oil from the fish and chip shop in town to make our own biodiesel and solar panels, etc. But no, I'd like to say thanks to all the angels for checking in, and we just finished bottling the new Shannon today, so that should be across in a week if all the trucks are allowed through the border.
Fingers crossed, right in time for spring, summer. Derek, you want to go?
Yeah, g'day. I'm Derek Cooper. I live in a place called Robe in southeast and South Australia. We've been making wine here since 1993, I suppose. We've just had a bit of a pathway of sustainability, I suppose, over the years, which sort of led us down the biodynamic way in the late 90s and ended up getting certified in 2008, which is pretty good for us. We've just taken our winery completely off grid. We have been using diesel gensets for the last probably 20 years, but we've now got to the stage that we've got a very large battery bank and about 120 odd kilowatts of solar. So our pathway to sustainability is one that's always evolving, I suppose. We just bottled one of our uncharted Cabernets for you guys, which will be on the way soon, which is looking really good. That's Little BD Vineyard from Rattenbulling. It's been good to be here anyway. Thanks.
Yeah, lovely. James, how about you?
Yeah, so I'm James. I'm winemaker and owner for Enfant Terrible, or handcrafted Enfant Terrible wines. Based out of the wine is based out of McLaren Vale and Adelaide Hills, and I been missing from the Adelaide Hills a little bit, but this year got a new white coming out, which is exciting. But for the better part of 3 months, I've been on the eastern seaboard, down in the Shoalhaven wine region. Naked's certainly been supportive, and got a new little pet project down here. Just been busy working 7 days a week, 14-hour days, establishing a vineyard. Have big hopes for this property, and one day sell a door if council ever lets my DA go through after the third attempt, fingers crossed. And everyone will be coming down, and all the angels will be coming and visiting. It'll be good to have a physical premise. So thanks for all the support.
Yes, more support so we get closer to that cellar door, right?
Yes. Yeah.
All right, guys, so all the way from New Zealand.
Hey guys, so I'm Gus Olschwager, one of the 4 people who make Olschwager Keneally, which Mark and Emma live in McLaren Vale, and they make organic wine from there. And my wife and I, Swan, make this brand Tappy from New Zealand, and predominantly based in Marlborough. We first started making organic wine in 2014, and Naked was the first people that we approached to ever make wine for ourselves. And the premise was it was going to be an organic wine, and you've supported us from the get-go. And the Sauvignon actually was the first wine we ever made for Naked, and it was our first organic wine that we'd ever made. So, and it's still going strong. I think the 21 is on a ship heading towards you pretty soon. So looking forward to getting some comments back. And actually the 2021 is the first time that one of our family vineyards has gone in as the last year of conversion to organic is a small component in the wine. So it's about a 20% component, and then the rest is the organic vineyard that we've always bought grapes from. So we're pretty excited because it's been quite a learning curve growing grapes organically for the last 3 years. And yeah, Mark's really helped me out in that regard. So it's a journey, I think.
Yeah, that's so exciting. Congratulations. All right, Jock, take it away.
Oh, well, I'll be very brief. Thank you, everybody. And yeah, it's good to see people around the table. Unfortunately, as you can see, the oldest naked winemaker here, but it's been a great pathway, and we've seen the industry turn and evolve. So it's great to be part of a panel like this. I actually feel like we're the Brady Bunch. There's 9 on the screen in my office, and I can see Cindy down there and the other one over the side. You know, we've actually got a great program Australia-wide, the Sustainable Wine Growing Program that's been taken up nationally. Had its origins in McLaren Vale in 2009, and it's grown. In 2014, one of our chapters of the program was diminished biodiversity in our region, and we started McLaren Vale Biodiversity in 2014. It was then taken up by Adelaide Hills in 2020, and it looks like it's going to get rolled out in the Barossa Valley this year. So I think the wine industry is at the Everest of farming. You know, people talk about it, taste it, and publish, and you know, we discuss it, and I think we have a responsibility to lead the way. So thanks to the support of Naked, you know, with these programs, both organic, biodynamic, and sustainable, and most certainly all of the angels who, you know, look to our products and listen to our stories and support us along the way. The Tree Hugger program was my winemaker fantasy, and that's been a great success. And you know, James has been planting trees in the past. Tree Huggers amplified that. So, you know, as a community, we can actually really make a difference to, you know, farming in the community, to everyone. So thanks, Naked and the Angels. Thanks for the opportunity to talk about things. And Naked Wine's first organic whiskey that we're talking about at the moment. So, you know, anyway, exciting things ahead. Thanks for the opportunity, guys.
Amazing, amazing. Don't forget, Angels, that you can always stay connected with your winemakers. Just make sure that you follow their page on our site. I popped in everybody's links in earlier. You can also just search their names in and, you know, follow along and stay up to date with what everybody is doing, and anything that's dropping, they'll let you know. And if you have any additional questions from this talk tonight, feel free to, you know, comment on their pages and ask them the questions that we didn't get to. Well,
Sorry, I'm
Johan?
on mute. Yeah, sorry, I'm on mute. It was that was a great discussion. You know, natural wine managed to sneak in there. I think it added some flavor. You know, thank you so much for joining us tonight, all the angels and all the winemakers. And Dannon, thank you for co-hosting. That was great. And yeah, Naked Wine, I have to say, I haven't been here that long, but I think the selection of organic and preservative-free and sustainable wine is pretty damn good for having quite a tight range. I think there is a really good representation there, and in particular, obviously, from the winemakers you've seen here tonight. So if you do care about how your grapes are grown and also the larger the rural communities that we support, winemakers that joined us tonight.
Yeah, definitely. And, you know, my personal advice from being an expert wine drinker, not knowing much about wine, is try all of these winemakers' wines, try them out, see what you like, and you'll learn a little bit more about, you know, how you enjoy organic or biodynamic or natural wines. So try all the wines out from Naked, and I think that's the best way to learn, right?
Yeah,
absolutely.
It is. And don't be shy on getting on our page and asking a question. Happy to, you know, answer anything to do with organic and or just general wine questions. So.
Yeah.
All right. I think that that concludes the first Octaster event. We got 4 more to go, Angels. I know some of you signed up for quite a few of them. So we'll be seeing you throughout the month. And yeah, it was a great night. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Good night.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Uh,
Bye.